We've been talking about the markets heavy duty lately. The markets closed on Friday over 27,000, like we've been talking about. Today at 27.3, looks a little out of gas, but I think any good news this week, 28 is in the foresights on that one. Hey, welcome back. It's just into hour two. And I want to thank again Dan Watkins for coming down and explaining to our audience all the great things that are happening around cannabis and CBD and hemp. And now I want to thank our good friend, attorney, former candidate for New York City public advocate, and contributor to Liquid Lunch, Manny Alicandro, joins us again. Manny, thanks for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
I might add that Manny and I came in hot today, straight from Atlantic City, from Morano's bachelor party.
Yes.
And joining me in Morano's place, Rich Valdez, because Manny and I answered the bell, but Frank's bubbly is here, but he's not. So, Manny, we had you on. You were on last week or a week or so ago about this MIT stuff, where MIT basically admitted that some of their faculty, some of their administration was still accepting donations from Epstein after he was convicted or pled guilty to the sex crimes. And now you're getting bombarded with letters from the administration, and now supposedly Harvard and other schools are getting drawn into it. What's the latest on this?
This is turning into a big story. So Epstein lives at least through these stories, right? I mean,
don't get me started, Manny. Don't get me started. I know he's living. You know that.
Never ending. So I got an email on Thursday from the president of MIT saying that they're conducting their internal investigation, and what they determined was that the president of MIT actually sent a thank you letter to Epstein for the donation after his conviction in 2012. So now, but you're getting into the point where the president of MIT is saying, well, I don't remember it. The letter had my name on it. I mean, the guy's the president of the most intelligent, best university probably in the world. And he's doing a I don't recall with regard to signing a letter. That's the point where that's getting to. It's pretty bad. But since I was last here, there's also been public disclosure that Reid Hoffman was involved through Joy Ito in reaching out to Epstein. Also, Neri Oxman, who's married to Bill Ackman, was a professor at MIT, or is a professor at MIT, and she received for her lab, she received $125,000 gift from Epstein. Wow. So this thing keeps growing and growing and growing. My concern is that I don't know how you run a university knowing all of this, running it while this happened, now admitting that you were in charge when it happened and you were aware of it and you really didn't do much. So I'm questioning whether this president of MIT, President Rafe, whether he could stay on, whether he could do his job at this point.
So Manny Alicandro, you're a proud alumnus of MIT, and that's why they're hitting you up and trying to get more money out of you, and you're finding out they're getting their money from Epstein. What is the course of action that you're currently proposing that MIT take to fix this, or at least put a nail in it and say, hey, we're done with this?
That's a great question, Rich. I think this is an institutional problem, right? So MIT is just an example of what's going on at major universities. When John mentioned Harvard, Epstein gave money to Harvard too. Harvard said, look, we spent the money. There's not much we could do at this point. So I think institutionally there's an issue in terms of if there's a big benefactor wants to give money to the school, what does the school do? What kind of due diligence does the school do with regard to an individual? One, on their character, their moral character. Is this a good or a bad person? Two, where does money come from? I mean, I think they need to do what financial institutions do in terms of some type of due diligence, in terms of anti-money laundering, KYC, AML, whatever. But at the end of the day, they need to do some type of due diligence. I'm not aware of the extent they do that.
Do you, I mean, you're a very well-established attorney. Do you think there should be some, base standards like best practices or something for all these universities of, hey, here are the people you can't take money from? Is there a universal standard, or every university just does their own thing?
I'm not aware that there's a list of people who are disqualified. My understanding is from what's publicly disclosed about Epstein, he was on a disqualified list at MIT. Now, I'm not sure if someone's on a disqualified list for MIT, if MIT needs to share that in some type of database, which actually might be a good idea in terms of all these universities need to communicate. You don't want to take money from this individual. He or she is a bad actor for these reasons, and put them on that list. It seems like the people at the university, particularly influential professors, professors, the people at the higher levels at the institutions, they have discretion to override, like at MIT, a disqualification.
So Joy Ito was running the Media Lab.
Right.
And one of the things that I think me and you got to the bottom of last time you were here was not only was Epstein directing money around this ban, he was getting other people to make anonymous donations, and now there's all these emails saying, hey, mark it as anonymous, but this came from Jeffrey and that came from Jeffrey. Is there a possibility also that the Media Lab, like if MIT Media Lab decides to take on your project, a startup or a new company, a new technology, you're an immediate unicorn, right? You go from zero to $1 billion valuation when MIT says they're part of us now. Do you think this guy Ito was like feeding the good deals to Epstein too?
Potentially. I mean, it's been publicly disclosed that I think Ito said about $1.2 million that Epstein invested through Ito in companies that Ito was affiliated with. What is well known is that Ito was well respected. He would speak at Davos. He was extremely highly regarded. So he's able to access all of the CEOs, startups. All the startups want to get affiliated with him because it's like the good housekeeping seal of approval. You get affiliated with MIT and a Media Lab, you're on your way to being a unicorn. So you got to think, potentially Epstein and others would get early looks at companies that are going to be unicorns or close. That's what's of concern to me in terms of a potential pay to play, in terms of twofold, right? One is you're paying to clean up your reputation. Epstein is affiliated with MIT. Now, MIT is saying, well, they were trying to contain that and make sure that he didn't use it to polish his reputation. I don't necessarily believe that because I think people in the know knew that he was giving money and affiliated, one. Two, because of that relationship and the professors like Joy Ito, who headed up the Media Lab, which was so powerful, did he get access to companies that otherwise other people wouldn't have gotten access to, but for the fact that he gave millions of dollars to the school.
So to clarify, 'cause I see two angles here, right? I see the one that you just mentioned, which is Professor Ito gets a potential deal and says, hey, I know that because of the MIT affiliation, you become a superstar right now as soon as we adopt this, but we need funding. They don't want it from Epstein, so I'll do what I got to do to skirt the rules to get it anonymously via Epstein. Or B, Epstein, people are going through Epstein saying, here's this, here's that, because he was known to be a launderer or a broker of funds for a lot of people to bring the money through MIT to do the same thing, manipulating from the backside. What's your take?
I think both are possible. I think this guy was very interesting and had a very interesting background. It was involved with so many people at so many different levels and layers. I think both are viable. I think what's of concern is the best we could do is to put pressure on institutions of higher learning like MIT and put pressure on MIT to really do the right thing, have the policies and procedures, have the proper protocols in place. And honestly, I'm calling for the resignation of the president as a proud alum because I don't think he can continue to do his job. He was in charge. Look, when you're in charge, you get credit for good stuff and you have to take the credit when it's bad stuff happens as well. So I think he needs to deal with the consequences and we need to clean this up and move on potentially.
Well, unfortunately for you, Manny Alicandro is coming for you, and he's calling for your resignation, Mr. President or Chairman of MIT. You were talking about, how these were ideas and big ideas. I have this idea in my head that Epstein is still alive, and the Clinton cartel busted him out of jail, and now they have him doing an undercover operation to take down Trump. And he's going around running a primary against Trump as Joe Walsh. Take a look at this. Look at that. You're telling me
that is an amazing resemblance. Absolutely. I hear you and I see you. Yes.
Yeah? Okay. All right. I'm just saying. You know what I mean? Conspiracy theories sell ratings.
Call
baby.
me a conspiracist, but whatever. I mean,
Manny was covering. He was at
potential.
the hospital. He was at the jail. He was everywhere. Me, I haven't seen a dead man yet, and
it does seem
Joe Walsh
suspect.
Looks like him. But I want to thank Manny Alicandro for coming down, joining us, giving you the inside and the latest on the MIT scoop with Epstein's secret donations. You're watching Liquid Lunch. Stay right there. Rich and I are going to come back in just a few with Jen Kearns to talk about Planned Parenthood and Joe Biden limping and eyeball bleeding and teeth falling out and all that other stuff right after this.